There was a time when you chased people. Not in an obvious way. You didn't beg. You didn't force anyone to stay. But you tried, quietly. You texted first. You checked if they were okay. You made time for them even when your schedule was full. You remembered small details about their lives, their favorite food, their stressful days, their little struggles. You cared in ways that most people didn't notice. But caring deeply often comes with a hidden cost. Because when you're the one who always reaches out, you slowly start noticing something. You're the only one reaching out. At first, you ignore it. You tell yourself people are busy. Everyone has responsibilities. Maybe they're just going through a difficult time. So you continue doing what you've always done. You keep the connection alive. You send the message. You make the call, you show up, and for a while, it feels normal. But over time, small patterns start becoming impossible to ignore. Conversations feel one-sided. Effort feels unbalanced. You notice that when you stop texting, the silence becomes very loud. Days pass, sometimes weeks. And suddenly you realize something that hits deeper than you expected. If you stop chasing, some people disappear completely. That realization hurts. Not because you needed attention, but because you believed the connection meant something to them too. You believed your presence mattered. You believed your effort was mutual. But reality slowly reveals something uncomfortable. Some people only stay in your life because you keep the door open for them, not because they are trying to walk through it themselves. That's when you begin questioning everything. You start replaying old conversations in your mind, moments when you made excuses for their behavior, times when you ignored the imbalance, times when you convinced yourself things were fine. But deep down, you knew something wasn't right. You were maintaining relationships that only existed because of your effort. And that kind of realization changes how you see people. One day, you decide to try something simple. You stop chasing, not out of anger, not out of revenge, just out of curiosity. You stop sending the first message. You stop initiating every conversation. You stop checking in constantly. And then you wait. You give people space to show their effort, space to prove they care, space to reach out the way you always did. But something surprising happens. Nothing. The silence continues, and that silence tells you more than words ever could. That moment is painful because it confirms something you hoped wasn't true. Some connections only existed because you were holding them together. Some friendships survive because you were the one keeping them alive. And when you stopped, they faded quietly. But pain sometimes brings clarity, because when you stop chasing people, you start seeing who was actually walking beside you. You begin noticing the few people who reach out without being reminded, the ones who check in without being asked. The ones who care about your presence just as much as you care about theirs. And suddenly your circle becomes smaller. But something else happens too. It becomes healthier. Because relationships were never meant to feel like a constant effort from one side. Real connection flows naturally. It doesn't require endless reminders. It doesn't depend on one person carrying the emotional weight. Real connection feels balanced. When you stop chasing people, something else changes inside you. You reclaim your energy. All those small efforts, the constant checking in, the emotional attention you gave away so freely, suddenly becomes available again. And for the first time in a long time, you start investing that energy somewhere else. Into yourself, into your goals, into the people who genuinely show up for you. And that shift feels powerful. Because instead of asking, "Why aren't they texting me?" you start asking, What can I build with this time? Instead of waiting for someone to notice you, you focus on becoming someone you respect. That's when your life begins moving forward again. Interestingly, something else sometimes happens. The people who got used to you chasing them start noticing your absence. They realize you stopped reaching out. They notice the silence where your effort used to be. And suddenly, they begin appearing again. Messages start coming in. Conversations restart. But this time, something is different. You're not desperate to keep the connection alive. You're observing. You're paying attention. You're asking a simple question inside your mind. Are they here because they care, or because they noticed you stopped chasing? And that question protects your peace. Because once you experience life without chasing people, you realize how peaceful it can be. You realize how much emotional energy you were giving away. You realize how many one-sided connections you were maintaining. And most importantly, you realize your value doesn't depend on how many people stay. It depends on the quality of the people who choose to stay. That's why walking away from chasing people isn't a loss. It's clarity. It's self-respect. It's understanding that your time and attention are valuable, and the right people will never require you to chase them endlessly. They'll walk beside you willingly. Sometimes the most powerful change in your life happens the moment you stop running after people and start walking forward without them. Because the ones who truly belong in your life will catch up.